I've always been a watcher. It's easy to sit there and observe someone and them not even knowing it. I watched a woman pick out sourdough bread at the end of a grocery aisle. I watched a man swing his daughter at the park. I observed, never too close, yet never too far. My interest is piqued by the allure of a single person's life unraveling before my eyes like a play where I am both the audience and director. In my current story, her name is Eliza, and her life has become the center of my universe. It started innocently enough, a chance encounter at a local coffee shop. She was there, laptop open, her focus absolute as her fingers danced across the keyboard. There was something about her, perhaps the way the light caught her hair or the intensity in her eyes that caught my attention. I watched her, day after day, learning her routines, her likes, dislikes, until the snippets of her life began to weave together into a narrative I felt an integral part of. My watching wasn't confined to the coffee shop. Social media provided a window into her world that I couldn't resist. Through her posts, I saw her life, her friends, her nights out, the places she loved. I began to visit those places, imagining our paths crossing, conversations sparking naturally. But that wasn't enough. I needed to be closer, to understand her on a level no one else could. I found her address through a combination of her social media posts and some dedicated research. The first time I drove past her house, my heart raced with excitement and fear. The fear was quickly overshadowed by a fascination that bordered an obsession. Night after night, I found myself parked outside, watching the light in her window, imagining the life she was just living beyond my reach. One evening, my curiosity got the better of me. I ventured closer than ever before. Under the cover of darkness, my footsteps silent on the damp grass. I peered through her window, my breath catching at the sight of her, so close yet oblivious to my presence. It was in that moment I realized I was no longer just a watcher. I had crossed a line from which there was no return. My obsession grew, consuming my thoughts and action. I started leaving small gifts for her, anonymous tokens of my affection that I hoped would intrigue her, make her wonder who could be so devoted. I fancied myself a secret admirer, but deep down, I knew the truth. I was stalking her, caught in a web of my own making, unable to extricate myself from this twisted narrative. Then came the night everything changed. She noticed me. It wasn't the way I had imagined it countless times before. There was no spark of connection, no intrigued smile. Instead, there was fear in her eyes, a scream caught in her throat as she confronted the stranger lurking in the shadows of her life. I ran, panic and adrenaline coursing through my veins as the realization of what I had become hit me. I was the monster in her story, the shadow that haunted her steps. The depth of my delusion became painfully clear, the understanding that my fascination could ruin her life, or worse. I tried to pull back to return to my life before Eliza, but the damage was done. She became more cautious. Her once vibrant social media presence dimmed, her outings less frequent. I saw the fear I had instilled in her, a constant reminder of the darkness I had brought into her life. The last time I saw Eliza, it was from a distance. She was not alone. The police was with her, a protective presence that marked the end of my watching. I knew then that my obsession had an end, that I had to let her go for her safety and my sanity. I disappeared from her life as suddenly as I had entered it, a shadow receding with the setting sun. Yet the guilt of my action lingers, a haunting specter of the person I became in the depths of my obsession. I am left with the memory of her, the reminder of the line between admiration and obsession, and the terrifying ease with which one can become the other. In the end, I am a watcher no more, but the lessons of my dark journey will stay with me forever. The realization that even the most benign fascination can turn into something sinister, and the understanding that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are those that dwell within us. In the digital age, anonymity is both a shield and a curse. I learned this the hard way through an app that was supposed to be fun, a way to connect and show my life, Snapchat. My name is Leah and I wanted to share my story, a warning cloaked in pixels and usernames. It started with a friend request from someone I didn't know, but it was social media. Everyone added and accepted a lot of people we didn't know. The username Eyes Watching should have been my first warning. The snaps began innocently enough, just landscapes, blurry city lights, a cat here and there. But the comfort of anonymity soon twisted into something more sinister. One evening, as I scrolled through stories from friends, a snap notification popped up from Eyes Watching. It was a picture of my own house, taken from the street. My heart skipped a beat. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I told myself it was a coincidence. They couldn't possibly know where I lived. I didn't even have my location on in Snapchat, so no one besides my really close friends knew where my house was. But the snaps continued, each more personal than the last. Photos of places I frequented, my favorite cafe, the bookstore I worked at part time. No messages, no threads, just photos. It was as if they were cataloging my routine, a silent observer documenting my life through a lens. The feeling of being watched settled heavily on me, an invisible weight I couldn't shake off. I tried blocking the users, but new accounts just sprang up. I told my friends what had been happening, but they just told me to ignore it and that it was probably just someone messy with me. I even tried to go to the police. They said they couldn't do much about an anonymous account on social media without explicit threats. I felt trapped, a prisoner in my own life, watched by unseen eyes. Then the snaps turned inward. Photos in my room, taken from outside my window. I recognized the angle from my own snaps, the ones I sent to my friends, moments of my life I shared without a second thought. Had they been piecing together my location from those snaps? The thought sent shivers down my spine. I kept the curtains to my window closed now, hopefully stopping them from peeking in. One night, as I laid in bed trying to convince myself to sleep, my phone lit up with a notification, a snap from a new account. Eyes closer. It was a photo of my front door, taken from the inside of my house. My breath caught in my throat, fear rooting me to the spot. The implication was clear. They were no longer content with watching from afar. I didn't feel safe calling the police, fearing it might provoke them into acting before help could arrive. Instead, I moved silently through the house, my phone clutched in my hands. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak of the house a potential threat. I found nothing, no sign of forced entry, no one hiding in the shadows. The photo could have been old, I told myself, an intent to scare me, but the seed of fear had already been planted. Sleep became hard to do, something I never had trouble with before Eyes Watching entered my life. I jumped at shadows and saw threats in every corner. The digital world I had once enjoyed became a landscape of paranoia. I deactivated my Snapchat, cut down on my other social media accounts. I did anything to feel like I was regaining control, but the damage was done. The feeling of being watched never truly left. The climax came weeks later. It was a text message from an unknown number with a video attached. The camera moved through my house, letting me know there was a silent intruder inside. It ended at my bedroom door, a slow, ominous creak as it began to push open, but it stopped there, the screen fading to black. The message clear. They could reach me whenever they wanted. I couldn't stay there after that. I left my house and stayed with a friend. I told her that my house was just getting fixed or whatever lie I could come up with. I never found out who was behind Eyes Watching. No friend ever came forward with a confession, and no stalker was ever caught lurking in the shadows. The photos and videos stopped as suddenly as they had started, leaving me to wonder if it was all some twisted joke. The damage was done though. I would always look over my shoulder everywhere I go. I'm jumpy. I get scared to post online, not knowing who is watching. I share my story not for sympathy, but as a warning. In our digital world, we are all visible all the time, whether we realize it or not. Our lives, once private, can become public spectacle with a single click, and sometimes behind the anonymity of a screen, there are eyes watching and waiting. You never know someone's likes, motives. Be careful what you share and who you share it to. My name is Michael, and I once found myself in a situation that I could never have anticipated. It began with the end of a relationship that I believed was mutual and amicable. Jenna, my girlfriend of 2 years, and I had come to the realization that our paths and lives were starting to become different. We had different goals, ambitions, and wants. I loved her, but maybe I was falling out of love. In the weeks that followed, I started a new relationship with someone I had known for years, a friend who had become something more. Sarah was everything my previous relationship with Jenna had not been. peaceful, stable, and filled with promise. It was a slight contrast to my time with Jenna, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of a fresh start. However, it wasn't long before I began to notice small things that individually didn't seem that big of a deal but collectively began to paint a disturbing picture. It started with missed calls from unknown numbers, always in the late hours of the night when I was asleep. Then came the anonymous texts and emails filled with threats and accusations. I initially had no idea who it was coming from. I thought it could have been someone just playing a weird joke on me. I tried to dismiss these occurrences, but when Sarah began to receive similar messages, I knew there was more than a joke. Someone was watching us and tracking our movements. When the messages started to become more personal, saying things that a stranger wouldn't know, that's when I knew it had to be someone that knew me. The only person that I could possibly think of that could have had some hate towards me was Jenna, my ex. I wasn't shocked though, because I was familiar with how angry and toxic she can be. Although our reason of breaking up was that we were becoming different, our relationship wasn't peaceful. We argued a lot about dumb things, and sometimes it felt like Jenna wanted to control certain aspects of my life, like who I could hang out with, or I shouldn't work long hours at my job. The harassment grew more over time. We would find notes left on Sarah's car, each one more threatening than the last. There were photographs taken from a distance that captured Sarah and I out when we thought we were alone. It started to take a mental toll on us, and I think we both even felt fear, as we didn't know how far Jenna could take this. I felt bad because I dragged Sarah into this. I even offered to break up with her, but she resisted, saying that this was what Jenna wanted. If anything, this made me like her even more, because although I dragged her into this mess, she still wanted to be with me. The climax of this thing came one night as Sarah and I returned to her apartment. The door, which we had been certain was locked when we left, was open slightly. I cautiously headed inside first. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of jasmine, Jenna's favorite perfume. Photos of Sarah and me, taken from social media, were defaced with angry scribbles and X marks and scattered across the floor. But it was the message left on the mirror, written in red paint or lipstick, that sent a shiver down my spine. Till death do us part. We immediately called the police after this. Restraining orders were filed, but the damage had been done. I think it took having her apartment, a place that should have been safe for Sarah, to realize the seriousness of all of this. Despite our best efforts, Sarah and I eventually broke up. I couldn't imagine how someone I loved could have had such hate for me. It obviously wasn't normal behavior. I knew this was something I would never fully understand. Jenna's action, driven by a misplaced sense of love and possession, had crossed the boundary of obsession, a reminder that we are capable of both great love and great darkness. Be careful who you choose in your life. Sometimes we think we know someone, but we really don't. It's scary thinking how fast they can turn on you and create a dark chapter in your life. I regret staying too long in that relationship with Jenna. Maybe if I had left earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Jenna. I know you're still out there waiting and watching. I hope you are able to move on to find your peace and happiness despite how much you have hurt and scared me.